The first thing when you think about marketing your practice is that your website is one of, if not the most important piece of your marketing. That's your online home. It's like your office, only on the internet. So we really want a website that's going to quickly communicate what your specialty is, who you work with, and how they can reach out for a consultation or whatever the next step is. And then we really want to make sure that it's up to date and it feels like it belongs in 2024 instead of like it belongs in 1998.
Hello, Profit First thought leaders and entrepreneurs. I'm so excited. We have a very special guest. We have Samantha Mabe of Lemon and the Sea joining us today. And she specializes in designing strategic websites specifically for the health and wellness professionals so they can show up in front of the right leads and get more patients into their practices. When she's not digging into design and strategy, she loves reading. Her goal is to read up to 200 books a year. And she also loves taking adventures with her very talkative kiddos. So please join me in welcoming Samantha Mabe to our platform. Hey, Samantha, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. Excited about this conversation because we do have a lot of health professionals that do listen in. And I know one of the big trends that we're seeing now is insurance reimbursements haven't been great. A lot of times they've been what they were pre-COVID, but costs have gone up significantly. And we've seen a lot of folks leave the traditional insurance world, meaning that they're now on their own, getting their own leads, not necessarily referrals from insurance companies. And this is becoming a very important area, having the right website that stands out. And so we're excited to talk with you today to find out what you're seeing in terms of trends with websites for healthcare professionals and some things that we need to be on the lookout for, and also how to design a great website. So, Samantha, one of the things I love to do with our guests is, first of all, I like to get the background story. Like, how did you end up in this side of the business, first of all?
Yeah, so I went to college for architecture, so I learned a lot of design related things there. And I decided that I did not want to continue pursuing that. And so I ended up at a small family run business doing their like accounting and design. And then when my husband moved, we're in Virginia now, he relocated for work. I followed him, couldn't find any job openings. And so I started doing some freelance graphic design, and I really found that I loved websites. So I started concentrating just on websites in about 2018. And then about 2020, I met some people in the health and wellness field, and we were going through like just a lot of stuff. I had my son in 2019. And so, like, I was finding, like, okay, what are some alternatives to just my doctor? And so I found that I really liked helping the health and wellness professions and like those people that are out there helping others and how I can serve them and help them serve their clients.
I love it. So, first of all, let's talk about some of the nuances that are there when it comes to health and wellness. I know it's a very compliant oriented type of field, and that's one of the big issues with it. But let's talk about some things that make health and wellness a little bit different than, let's say, advertising for an accounting firm or a fashion
Yeah.
boutique.
Yeah, there are definitely some things you have to keep in mind. The big one for pretty much anyone who's collecting health information is that we have to follow HIPAA. Um, so that doesn't affect necessarily what you say on your website, but it does affect how your website works in collecting potential patient information and like all the systems on the back end that get them into your books. So that's something we have to consider. And then every field and every state have different requirements as far as sharing testimonials or sharing patient stories. And so you have to know, like, can I share anything? Can I share it if it's anonymous? If I take out like any identifying data? If we really have to like look at what are the legalities behind that information when we plan out websites. So a lot of people will tell you include testimonials on your website, but some people can't. We can't do that. So that is a difference as well. And then there are some just extra disclaimers that we need to make sure that we have room for, that are linked up and that show up in the right places so that we are covered for anything that we might share.
I love it. Thanks for going into that differentiation. And I can definitely see the importance of that, not wanting to influence someone indirectly and or in a way that we shouldn't be. But at the same time, also like, protecting our licenses too is very
Yeah.
important with that. So let's talk about getting leads now and attracting leads and some of the things that you're seeing in terms of website trends for healthcare professionals that are making them more attractive because let's say they are moving away from the insurance model. What are some things that you're seeing as must-haves in websites for this to happen?
Yeah. I have about 50% of my patients are private pay only, or of my clients do private pay only. And I have actually hired some of those people for myself and my son and like different fields. So, what I like to tell people is the first thing when you think about marketing your practice is that your website is one of, if not the most important piece of your marketing. That's your online home. It's like your office, only on the internet. So we really want a website that's going to quickly communicate what your specialty is, who you work with, and how they can reach out for a consultation or whatever the next step is. And so it's important to have a website. And then we really want to make sure that it's up to date and it feels like it belongs in 2024 instead of like it belongs in 1998. So that's what a lot of what I have seen is websites for these practices are really out of date. They're hard to use. Like they just feel like, are you even still in business? Are you going to understand? So we really want to hone in on like what our niche is as far as who we're working with, and then how can we communicate that on our website, and how can we get it in front of the right people.
I love it. So, in terms of examples of communicating that and getting it into the right people, first of all, where do you start with attracting that ideal customer, right? Because as patients, people have choice, right? There, some of them are paying upward to over $1,000 just for insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to have a very compelling reason as to why they need to go to a non-insurance private pay practitioner. So let's talk about what are some of the things that need to be there to attract that person.
Yeah, I think the first thing, and this is something I noticed when I was searching for an occupational therapist for my 5-year-old, was I would go to a lot of occupational therapy websites, whether they accepted insurance or not. And I had no idea if they specialized in pediatrics and if they would be good for a very energetic little boy to come into their office. Same thing with a therapist. We will recommend to take him to some therapy. And I'm looking at these websites and I'm like, okay, but he's not going to sit on a couch and talk to you for an hour about his feelings. He needs something else. And so, what I think is really helpful for people is to figure out who it is that you want to work with. And the more specialized you can be, the better off you are if you're not going to take insurance. Because then you're going to be the go to person for that particular audience and that particular issue. And they're going to know, they're going to come to your website and they're going to go, okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for. It looks friendly, it looks fun and bright, and they've got toys, and I can see that their office is designed for children and they're not going to go crazy when he's running all over the place. And I am going to be willing to pay more money out of pocket because I know that you are the provider who's going to be able to work with him versus somebody that my insurance just popped up on their listing that I'm like, I don't know if this is what you do. I can't figure out like what it is that would be the best option. So we really want to show up and be like, I totally get these people that I'm working with so that when somebody finds us, they are willing to make that investment.
Ooh, I love that. Guys, Samantha just dropped some golden nuggets there. Like serious golden nuggets. She just said something very important. you got to be very specific as to what the problem is that you solve. You have to niche it down. You can't just be the go-to dermatologist. You have to be the go-to dermatologist that deals with freckles or
Yeah.
whatever the issue is that you're dealing with, right? And so you got to be that niche down in order to speak to that ideal customer. You have to be able to speak the pain point and speak the hurt and really say, this is why I'm going to you. I love that. That is really, really important with that. Thank you, Samantha, for that.
Yeah.
What else needs to be there?
I think the next thing that I tell people is once they know that information, that's when we get into the design. And the design that you're going to use on your site varies widely depending on who your audience is. If it's a pediatric practice, it's going to be bright colors and fun shapes. And if it's something that's like for more for adults, it might be cooler and calmer. And so we want to really figure out like how can our design reflect the patients that we work with in the colors that we choose, in the little details, in the images that we choose. I just had a post talking about we don't want images of plants and sunsets and beaches. We want images of this is what it looks like to work with you, and this is the outcome that you're going to get. And then we really have to get into the strategy. Like we have kind of the how we want it to look and we want it to feel for people. And then what can we include on our website that's going to make it really easy for people to get the information they need and then reach out about working with you.
I love it. I love it. So many golden nuggets here, Samantha. And first of all, one thing that Samantha just said was designing your website with just even down to the color that your patients would prefer. What would motivate them to look for you or look at you more? And, so many times, like when I've done websites from, our company, I picked the colors based upon what I liked. I figured who wouldn't like blue, right? But Samantha just twisted it. She goes, you got to think of what is your patient looking for? Is your patient looking for calmness? What colors does that need to be? Is it for children? Does it need to be bright and colorful, right? It's not about you. It's about what does your patient want, your customer want, and what would motivate them to buy. So many good juicy nuggets. And then even the content. What are the questions that your potential patient, what are they wanting to know more of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where when we get into strategy and we have to decide, okay, what pages are we going to have here? How are we going to like set up our menu for their journey? That's where we need to think of who is looking at this, what kind of information do they need, and what is the ultimate goal that we want somebody who is a really good fit to take. And that can vary depending on your practice. It could be scheduling a consultation. It could be filling out a form so that you can call them. It could be getting on an email newsletter. But we have to kind of have that mapped out before we dive into let's actually create this and put it online.
I love it. I love it. So Samantha, now that we've got this beautifully designed website that is patient focused, that's beautiful content, tells me about all about my journey and where I'm going to go if I work with you. How do I get it so that the world hears about this?
Yeah, I mean, that's what everybody wants, right? We can have a beautiful website, but if nobody sees it, it doesn't do anything for us. So the biggest thing for websites is SEO, search engine optimization. Basically, one of my friends says you want to be the answer to the question that somebody searches on Google. And so we go through your website. What you'll do is you'll make sure that you are using keywords. So the words your patients are actually searching for in your headlines, in your copy, on your blog posts. And then there are also kind of back end settings that we can set up for that as well. It's like the title of your site that shows up at the top of the window, the listing that shows up on Google. We can add keywords about who we work with, where we're located, the types of appointments that we offer, if it's virtual or in person. All of that information should be in there so that when somebody searches, I need a chiropractor near me, I need a doctor near me, you are going to show up because you are hitting those right words. that relate to their search.
I love it. SEO is still very, very important then.
Yeah.
That's still triggering a lot of how people are finding you. I know there's always this debate of, pay per click versus SEO. And when there's a limited budget, there's sometimes, debate about where do we spend the money at? Do we spend it on SEO and creating and updating content, or do we spend it on just ads? I'm curious, Samantha, what are your thoughts with that?
So I am not an ads person. My thought would be go with the SEO first, get a really good foundation. And then if you feel like that is working and you want to drive more traffic, that's when ads can come in because you've already got the really good content on your site that's going to keep them there, that's going to share everything. Uh, you can have as many ads as you want, but if somebody gets to your website and they're like, okay, but I don't actually know what you do, or you didn't actually answer my question, it's not going to be worth the investment.
I love it. I love it. So focus on the SEO first, and then once you know that you're communicating the right message, then invest in the ads.
Yep.
So, Smith, I'm curious, where you've got physicians setting up beautiful websites and it's not working, where is it going wrong?
There could be a couple of places. The first thing I tell people to do, there's a free tool from Google called PageSpeed Insights. You can just type that in, Google it, you put in your URL, and it is going to come up with a long list of things that basically gives your website a score. And it will tell you if there are issues and what they are. One of the biggest things that can affect not only if people can see your site on search results, but how they interact with your website is how fast your website is to load. So if it's really slow, people aren't going to stay around. We don't have the attention span. It's also going to tell you things like, are you meeting accessibility criteria? So do you have a high enough color contrast? Are your fonts large enough? And there are going to be a lot of things on that list that you cannot control. And we're just going to say, okay, that is not in my wheelhouse. But there are things like your images are too big or your buttons are not clickable that can be quick fixes that can get you to show up better in front of people. So that's the first place I like to tell people to start. And then the second thing I tell people to do when they're noticing this is go to your phone or somebody's mobile device and actually look at your website. At least 40% of your traffic is going to be coming on a mobile device. So you want to make sure that it looks good and that it is working for people who are looking at you that way.
I love it. You're absolutely right. I mean, when you're in a pinch, you need to call someone, you're always on your phone because you're just going to click the button that says call now. So you're right. Mobile is probably actually more important than what it looks like on your computer nowadays.
Yeah. And for a lot of like medical practices, people are looking for, like, they might even just pull up Google Maps instead of a Google search because they want to see, like, who is nearby to me. And so we want to make sure that your information is there, that that's linked to your website. You've got those same keywords. Like, you have to make sure that all those pieces, they don't cost money to do, but once you spend the time and you're like, okay, how could people be looking for me? You want to make sure you're showing up there.
Now, Samantha, I'm sure others have been through the situation where they've hired someone to help them do a website and they've either got a cookie cutter website or just a website they just weren't happy with. How do you find somebody that is going to do a good job? Like what's the best way to hire someone and know that they're going to do a good job? How do we reduce that risk of getting a disaster?
Yeah. I think the first thing to do is if you know somebody, especially somebody in your industry who has worked with a website designer and liked them, then just ask for a referral. Find out who they worked with. That's a really good place to start because you know they're already kind of trustworthy. You've seen their work. If you don't know of anybody to start off with referrals, I would do some searching as far as like website designers in your specific industry. Take a look at their portfolio, take a look at their process, and then you're going to have to schedule some calls. You're going to have to talk to these people to see, do we click personally? Will they answer my questions? What is their timeline? You kind of want to get all of that information from them and just make sure like that they're actually responding to you and that you like the designs that they have made for other people. Those are some really important points to check out.
I love it. I love it. So, Samantha, one of the things we like to ask our guests is, as we close out, if you could leave our guests with any advice, it can be personal, it can be business related, website related, what would that advice be?
I think my biggest advice that, and I've been trying to follow this myself, is to just take some breaks and get outside. It's summer right now when we're recording, so it's really hot. But when I can go outside for a few minutes and like get away from the screen and get away from clients and all of my to-do lists, like I can be totally refreshed. And that just makes it so much easier for me to come back and do the work that I have to do.
That is so true. There's nothing like therapy of going outside. I'm telling you, it just adds that balance to your life. So this is really good advice, Samantha.
Thank you.
And Samantha, what's the best way for our viewers and listeners to learn more about what you do, to work with you? What's the best way to contact you?
Probably on my website. It's lemonandthesea.com. If you're more of a social media person, all of my handles are Lemon and the Sea. It's really easy to find, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. And what I'll do is I'll put Samantha's contact information in the show notes so that you'll be able to reach out to her, follow her, and have her do your website. Thank you, Samantha, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.